Hey, good afternoon to you. Mark Stott with HurricaneTrack.com here with your off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for January 1st, 2020. Can't believe I'm saying that. It's just kind of hard to believe we're here. 2020, how about that? So this is the off-season edition. It's been a while. I've both had a cold, nothing major, just an annoying cold. I've been on vacation a little bit, took some time off, and went out west again like I try to do every winter, or at least early winter, with my wife. We like to travel to Vegas. Did that recently. Last year when I did that, it darn near killed me, so I'm certainly doing a lot better than I was this time last year. Over the past year, I have lost 60 pounds, really taking care of myself, this little head cold notwithstanding. And so it's definitely been a much improved year, 2019 into 2020, and I guess that's good for me anyway. Hopefully it's good for you, because that means I'm still here being able to bring you this information, which is hopefully helpful in your lives. So Happy New Year to all of you. Let's get on with it. Take a look at what's going on out there. Obviously nothing going on tropically speaking, but we'll start the discussion off in earnest here with a look at the satellite animation here from our friends over at TropicalTidbits.com. I do believe that Levi Cowan is now a PhD. I need to confirm that. I haven't seen much in the way of any Twitter activity from him lately, but I believe he's earned it. He's gotten his PhD, and so he is now Dr. Levi Cowan. So hopefully the congratulations are in order, and that is in fact a fact that he has earned that PhD. The author and awesome coder of TropicalTidbits.com. Imagine what he is going to be able to do during the next decade. Wow. All right, so the satellite imagery animation today, nice and clear down across the Caribbean. So if you have cruise plans down there, or you are living or visiting down there currently, no issues at all with any convective activity. Boy, look at the strong upper-level winds coming out of the southwest off of the South American continent across the tropical Atlantic. Water temperatures down this way are plenty warm for development. No doubt about it. They're also very warm. I'll show you this in a moment, across the Caribbean and into the Gulf of Mexico. So why don't we have hurricane activity in the wintertime? Well, this is a big reason for it right here. Strong upper-level winds. There's also a lot of dry air down here. The instability is just not there. It just goes to show you that warm water alone is not the main ingredient. You have to have more than that. That's certainly a big help. Obviously, tropical cyclones derive their heat energy from the warm ocean, but other factors come into play. And so this time of year, we focus mainly on different larger signals that we will be tracking, and then, of course, features up here in the higher latitudes, big winter storms, anything like that. We keep an eye on that. Flood potential coming up in the spring, keeping you weather aware. We keep you hurricane ready and weather aware. That's generally my mission statement, I guess, my goal. So nice and clear in the Caribbean and elsewhere. No major storms over the lower 48 either. However, this is going to create a little bit of a rainmaker, to say the least. But no big winter storms with widespread frigid temperatures or any major blizzards or anything like that, where it affects millions of people and like regional travel issues or whatever. But we do have a winter storm taking shape with energy coming up out of the Pacific that will bring some inclement weather for portions of the South. We'll look at that in more detail in just a moment. Now, bring me back on so I can talk to you for a second. One of the things that we will be watching in the off-season, and we only have about 5 months to go until hurricane season kicks in again, June 1st, May 15th for the Eastern Pacific. That's when the season starts there. We will be tracking this metric right here, what we call the ENSO, or El Nino Southern Oscillation, and that's just a fancy way of calling it, are we going to have an El Nino or not? And the Climate Prediction Center, as well as other agencies, individuals, universities, you name it, are watching this all the time, not just about what would happen for hurricane season, but a warm or cold INSO event where you have departures from normal, either colder or warmer, drives a lot of as to what goes on in the short-term climate pattern, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months out, even sometimes annually. And for our purposes, we like to track this, the INSO, the state of the El Nino Southern Oscillation, as it's called, to see how it will affect hurricane season. And this is really nice. This is from the Climate Prediction Center. It's kind of like a PDF version of their PowerPoint presentation that they do weekly. Here are your Nino regions, and you might be wondering, well, what am I looking at there? That is Mexico, there's South America, so forth and so on, Western South America. This is the tropical Pacific through here. And these are the regions. It looks kind of like a Venn diagram a little bit. Some of the regions overlap. Here's your Nino 1-2 area, your Nino 3, your Nino 4, and then your Nino 3-4 overlaps. And these are the areas that we watch. That's what it looks like on a map. This is what each section looks like broken down into the temperature profiles. So the Nino 4 area, which is way over in the western Pacific, generally running warmer than average. You know, it's got a few dips in there, but overall running about, well, as it shows here, 1 degree Celsius. And that's what I like about this, by the way, the different ways we can visualize this, both in tabular format with the table there about, well, let's just look at the numbers, 1 degree, 0.4, 0.2, 0.3, etc. for the Nino 4, 3.4, 3, and 1-2 areas, or you can look at it in sort of a graphical visualization represented with the anomalies using the colors and the chart there. Blue is below average and the orange is above average. So, you know, there's a lot to throw at you, but this is a great way to keep up with it, and we will visit this once per week. So what do we have? Again, Nino 4, a degree Celsius above average. The Nino 3.4 area, which is generally what people like Dr. Phil Klotzbach look at. That is this area right through here, roughly cutting through a good deal of the tropical central Pacific, and that is about 0.4 Celsius above average. And then the Nino 3 is 0.2, and the Nino 1-2 area right off the coast of South America there is slightly above average. So all the indices, that's index plural, are showing above average, but they're not skyrocketing and they're not substantially above average. But this is what we can look at. This is a huge piece of the puzzle. We'll try to figure out what could happen during next year's Atlantic hurricane season, and to some extent the overall Pacific season as a whole, because a warmer tropical Pacific leads to generally more forcing in that area, more upward motion. It's just like this big chain reaction that goes on. You can't just look at this and think that it has regional effects. It's not. It's global. So anyhow, we'll be able to watch this very closely. Once per week, we'll do that. We'll revisit this next week. Usually I do these updates. Probably going to do them Tuesday, Wednesday each week in the off season, because Monday, a lot of the times the data doesn't come out until later in the afternoon, and you might as well just wait until Tuesday or Wednesday. But once a week, we will visit this data, I promise. All right, let's get rid of me again. So this is what it all looks like, and you're used to this map looking from above. Okay, so this is a Mercator projection map, plan view, where you're looking down on it, and these are the areas. These are the contours. Well, they're not contours here, but they're shaded. You could outline them with contours, but you get the idea. Here's your warm Nino 1-2 part of the 3 area. This is your a little bit cooler 3.4, and then way over here on the west pack is your 4 area. But just looking at this, you know, from I guess what would you say, verbatim, like if you just take this at face value, you say, well, the Pacific's really not that much warmer overall all the way through here, and you can clearly see that. Nothing jumps out like that big blob right there. That's very warm in the South Pacific, or south of the continent of Africa here, along the equatorial regions of the Atlantic. That's also quite a bit warmer than average. So this jumps out at you. This certainly jumps out. You know, this is a lot of real estate that's cold, you know, and so it's just interesting to follow this on a weekly basis and see how things change in kind of slow motion. But notice one, I think, very important puzzle piece that we do have in place right now, we just have to see if it stays that way, is the general warm look to the Atlantic. It's not exceedingly so, but it's also not very cold overall. Maybe right here in the main development region, this tongue of cold anomaly showing up. But overall, the Atlantic's just slightly warmer. In some areas, it's a lot warmer than it should be, especially the northwest Atlantic. And you know what? It seems to have been this way for the past several years, 5, 6 years or more, maybe more than that, that the northwest Atlantic and the subtropics are staying warm, kind of a so-so main development region, and then no really overwhelming INSO signal except 2015. That was a pretty big signal then. And look what's happened. 16, 17, 18, 19, those hurricane seasons have been fairly busy in the Atlantic basin. Certainly, we've had our share of Cat 4 and 5 hurricanes, 2 of them last year. Cat 5 Michael in 2018, and the very powerful hurricanes of 2017 with Irma and Maria, right? So, interesting sort of subgroup of busy seasons and strong storms with a similar look to the Atlantic basin. We haven't seen very much change. Will that go on through the rest of 2020? Hey, I wish I knew. I would be a very wealthy person and could fund whatever I want to do if I knew the answer to that. Now, why did this disappear on me? That's just rude. There we go. So this is yet another way to look at it. And I love visualization, being able to look at something from lots of different angles. And in the case of oceanography, meteorology, geography, geology, any of the earth sciences, visualization is very important. So this is kind of like a cross-section of this map right here. Does that make sense? It's kind of like we took a slice right through here in the vertical to see what's going on. I guess you could slice it horizontal, but that's not very helpful. So this is a slice through the tropical Pacific, and here's your very pronounced warm area near the surface in the eastern Pacific. This is the East Pacific over here. A little E for you there. This is the Westpac on the left side, and then you got this cold blob lurking below. Lots of warmth overall, but then more cold lurking in the Westpac, so this tries to all balance out. And then you get into the complicating factors of what we call westerly wind bursts, and the convectively coupled Kelvin waves, and oceanic Kelvin waves. And then all of this starts to become very convoluted on the one hand, if you just want simple answers, or it can become very fascinating if you like in-depth analysis. So I try to break it down as to what's the bottom line. The bottom line, when I look at this generally suggests a warm Pacific going through the next several months, but no easy answers as to where this ends up for hurricane season. There's plenty of cold water in the subsurface. There's also some large islands of warm water relative to average. These are anomalies. That's what I mean when I say cold and warm. But where is it going? That's hard to say. Different models suggest different things. But generally, this progresses from the left of the screen to the right, or west to east. And so what happens over here usually ends up over here with time. So we got this cold water lurking below. I think this will eventually surface, and we will see a cooling off of the eastern Pacific as we head into probably February and into March. Does that feed back and create a cooler Pacific into the spring? I just simply don't know. There's no way to know for sure. But here's what I keep talking about. We can watch this on a weekly basis, or bi-weekly usually is when this gets updated that's useful, and we can track what happens. All right? So that's what we will do. That's what we do in the off season here. We obsess over this because we can. We've got the tools to be able to watch this. So these are all different analyses for, going back to this, for INSO, anomalies, subsurface anomalies. Now, what about actual sea surface temperatures? Well, to me, this is really interesting, and I'm going to save this image. This is from December 31st. These are always a day behind, but this is the Gulf of Mexico, and these are not anomalies. These are actual sea surface temperatures right there is 26 Celsius, or about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And then the orange color is 27, or 81. So look at it a different way. The Gulf of Mexico in the east central Gulf is 81 degrees Fahrenheit on the first day of the new year in January 2020. And you say, well, is that above normal? And the answer is yes. I'll show you that in just a moment. That's definitely above the long-term average. Everywhere else over here, pretty much where it should be. But that, my friends, is quite a bit warmer than it should be. I can show you on the anomaly map. If we zoom into the Gulf of Mexico, there it is right there, that loop current running about, 2 degrees, 2.5 degrees Celsius above the long-term average. So there's your anomaly. It gets detected via satellite. And then here it is for real, also detected via satellite. That's what it translates to. 81 Fahrenheit on January 1st. So we'll see if you don't get any big Arctic intrusions down here and South Florida cools off, this is going to hang around. It really doesn't affect hurricane season because the Gulf is always going to be warm enough, but this can fuel heavy rain events because the warm water leads to more evaporation, more energy available, more moisture for storms. It could lead to a big severe weather season for the deep south. We'll just have to wait and see. Maybe the fueling of a big winter storm, if one were to take shape, if the dynamics are there. It's just interesting to see. Very, very warm water for this time of year in the Gulf. So you know what? If you took a boat out of Pensacola, just a couple hundred miles south, and jumped in, the water temperature would be 81 degrees. That's incredible. Wow. All right. In the Atlantic, off the coast of the mid-Atlantic and southeast, the Carolinas up through New England, etc. Even here, 26 Celsius. Are you kidding me? If you went off of Charleston, just a couple hundred miles, not even that. 26 Celsius, jumped in the Gulf Stream, 80 degrees. The air temperature could be in the 60s, and you jump in the water in the Gulf Stream there, and it would be 80 degrees. It'd feel like jumping into a jacuzzi or a warm pool. That's amazing, and it is above the long-term average. We can look at that right here. Look, very warm right off the coast of the United States there, North America, all that's included. Unbelievable. So we'll see if any winter storms tap into that. And I'm wondering if we're going to have a repeat of last year where all the major storms kind of took a track like this somewhere in this alley, and none of them went up the East Coast. We had no major East Coast winter storms last year. Are we going to repeat that? We shall see. So these are the tools, again, that we can watch as we look. I don't want to say look forward. It makes it sound like we like hurricanes. I think we like tracking them. We're certainly interested in what they do. And these are the tools that we can use to look ahead, look forward in time, to what the hurricane season may hold, which again is only 5 months away. That'll go by quickly. You know how that works. So El Nino, Southern Oscillation, sea surface temperatures, things like that. We'll look at this on a weekly basis. The other thing we do is we take a gander at lower 48 weather. Are there any big winter storms coming? As we get to spring, especially, any severe weather outbreaks. We're not quite there yet, though you can have severe weather in the winter. In the spring, we look for potential tornado outbreaks. So here's the lower 48, the Euro for today. Here's the East Coast. There's Florida, just getting you acquainted with what's what and where's where. Baja, there's California, Washington, Oregon, and Canada. Vancouver and beyond. So here is the lower 48, and here's the jet stream. You can see that outlined with this rainbow color showing you the 500 millibar heights in the atmosphere. And you notice there's kind of a cutoff low almost over here over northwest Mexico. But generally speaking, the flow across most of North America, well, the lower 48 anyway, is off the Pacific and rather zonal. See that? It's basic meteorology, real easy to understand. That air is not coming from the polar regions. That's not happening. You can clearly see that on this map. This is so wonderful. Again, we talk about visualizations. Here you go. So this is the initial map from the Euro. It's 24 hours out, and you see that trough tries to dig in a little bit. So a little bit of winter weather and cold in the Rockies. So if you like snow skiing in the Rockies, there you go. Move it ahead another day. That trough of low pressure amplifies. 72 hours out, it slides to the east, and a nice big ridge starts to build over the western states. So there's your ridge, there's your trough, and low pressure here, rainy along the front there. This doesn't show up very well here. This is just more of the general pattern outlining that we don't really have any severe cold. This is 4 days out, maybe some storminess, nor'easter type activity off the coast of New England into the Gulf of Maine and Nova Scotia. But again, nothing out of the ordinary, no big unusual, ridiculously cold outbreaks. And look, this trough is short. The wavelength of it is very short. It's not this deep longitudinal trough like that. And when I see these little short wavelengths of troughiness, I know, well, that's not very active for winter weather. That's 4 days, there's 5 days. There you go, there's 5 days. And look what happens. By day 5, this is Monday morning, back to school for everybody. I know it is for my kids. The winter break will be over. Look, more zonal flow. Generally speaking, just a little kink in it down here over Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle, but no major, huge dips. You don't see that, or something over the East Coast or whatever. So not very cold. You just can't flood the lower 48 with bitter Arctic cold when you have a pattern that looks like this. Day 6, more of the same. Finally, a week out, a week from today. A little bit of a change in the northeast, maybe. Some troughiness out west, but this is a week out. We'll see what happens. Just no big-time storms. Just sort of progressive, fast-moving, hit-or-miss kind of deal. Typical garden variety winter storms. No blockbuster events anytime soon. So we take a look at lower 48 weather, and if there is a big storm system that I can cover in person reasonably, funding-wise and technology-wise, I'll do so. And typically I'm looking for something in the northeast, mid-Atlantic states, a big blizzard, something like that. We just haven't had anything once again, but it's early. It's only January 1st. We know, like hurricane season, that typically the winter weather peaks at a certain time, just like hurricanes peak in August and September. Typically, once you get into February, that's the peak month for winter storm activity for the lower 48. All right, couple things that we are working on our Patreon. Going to be pushing this a lot more in 2020. It is helping to fund what we do, but it's also a great cooperative of people that help out in a lot of other ways as well, both from encouragement to helping to pick up equipment, active participants like some of you are. It's what it's all about. And, money is what makes the world go round, but it's also the help and the people helping to purchase equipment, people meeting in person, buying dinner, hanging out, encouragement, whatever. It's all part of that, and we're doing that on Patreon. And one of the things that I get to do in return, kind of my way of saying thank you, but I also enjoy it very much, is this podcast. And it's available only on Patreon. And it's called Stories from the Hurricane Highway. It's an audio podcast. Chapter 4 I will be producing later today into tonight. And we're already up to the year 1999. It's kind of a retrospective, going back to the very beginning of my career and just talking. No current events, no outlook and discussion stuff. It's stories. How did I get into it? Who did I meet along the way? When did I do this? Intimate details that you don't get from a blog or a tweet or a Facebook post or a YouTube video, and even more intimate than the documentaries that I do, the Tracking the Hurricanes series, because these are just like you and me sitting down chatting over dinner somewhere for hours and hours. And this will take years and years to build. So I started it on December 1st. We've been going a month. Woohoo! All right. And Chapter 4 drops tonight. And actually, Chapter 4 will be broken up into several episodes, if you will, because 1999 was a huge, huge year for my career and some of the things that I did, and that's what I will be discussing tonight. So if you've been interested in wondering what Patreon is all about, it's easy. It's Patreon. Well, I'll show you when I sign off. But that's what we're doing. That's the audio podcast. Then, later in the month, the original series, a video. So I'm taking my Tracking the Hurricanes documentary format that used to be like a 2-hour movie, and now I'm doing it in a series called the Hurricane Highway. So you have your stories from the Hurricane Highway, which is kind of like a companion podcast, but this new original series is the video series, like a TV show. And this, I think you're really going to like. Also, only available on Patreon until June, and then in June I'll put it on Amazon Prime Video. This is, like I said, I'm trying to build something like Netflix. This is the Netflix for weather geeks. If I could just get a fraction of the subscribers that Netflix has, then we could really do some stuff. But we are doing some stuff from what we do have, and that's what I'm very grateful for. And this series will reflect that. I'll be able to look back at the 2019 hurricane season, but like I said, instead of a 2-hour movie, it'll be more of an episodic look at things, with 8 episodes going back through archives, not only of what we did in 2019, but even 20 years ago, that helps to build these stories and the success that we had in 2019. You'll just have to watch to find out. So if you're on Patreon already, this starts to come into fruition towards the end of the month. The first couple of episodes will be ready. They'll be 15, 20, 30 minutes. Some of them will be an hour. Who knows? That's the beauty of this original content. Like you see on Netflix and Amazon, originals. You make them as long as you want or as short as you want. It doesn't matter. It is content and creator driven because of crowdfunding and support from people just like you watching. So that's what's coming up. That's what I'm working on as we get ready to really dig deep into 2020. Hey, we got a long way to go. It's only the first day, but we're already looking ahead, getting ready. The technology is going to let us do so much. It's already done that. Imagine where we're going to get to go from here. Just think of where we were 10 years ago and look at where we are now. All right, so HurricaneTrack.com, that's where I am on the web. HurricaneTrack on Twitter. Patreon for our crowdfunding and all sorts of other exciting things. And you can just go to the link in the description of today's video for more information on Patreon and what we're doing there. And I'll also put a link to our 2018 documentary on Amazon. If you haven't seen it yet, you can take a look at it. Before you go back to work or school, check it out. Amazon Prime Video. We have 2 titles there, the 2017 documentary and the 2018. I'm working on getting everything on there, but it takes time, and I'm only one guy. So anyway, all right, that's it. Usually these videos are kind of lengthy, as you've noticed, but I try to educate you, show you what I would look at even if you weren't there. This is what I do. Hey, I appreciate you tuning in. As always, it's wonderful to have you. Happy New Year to you all. Thanks for being a part of this. Whether you're brand new or if you've been sticking around and been with me for 20 years or more, it's wonderful. It really is. I truly am living my dream, and without you, I wouldn't have any reason to be here. So thank you very much. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you again next week.